NASA has recently emphasized that this is a pivotal moment to focus on Venus, following new findings that suggest the possibility of life on the planet. If you look back at NASA's records from the 1960s, you'll notice that Venus was initially viewed as a planet of judgment, while Mars became the primary target for exploration. During the intense period of the space race, such labeling of planets wasn't unusual, with the Soviet Union also focused on sending missions to Venus. Despite Venus showing little promise for life, the Soviet space program continued its Venera mission until the fall of the USSR. According to deGrasse Tyson, we now understand why this focus on Venus was important. Join us as we review declassified images of Venus taken by the Soviet Union. The fall of the USSR was significant for many reasons, not least because it sealed away many secrets, including those related to extraterrestrial life. The Soviet Union was known for keeping its space exploration details under wraps. So much of what we know about their Venusian missions comes from declassified or lost data. Before the US became a leader in planetary missions, the Soviet Union was ahead in space exploration, particularly with Venus, or Venera as it's called in Russian. The Venera program ran from 1961 to 1983, during which the US was more focused on the Moon. It's not entirely odd that the Soviets dedicated so many resources to Venus. Some speculate that they were investigating Venus for potential uses, like as a power station or a site for colonization, though we don't know for sure. Why were the Soviets so focused on this hostile planet during the Cold War? In fact, much of what we know about the Soviet Venus missions comes from declassified and incomplete records. They launched 28 rockets worldwide, 13 of which entered Venus' atmosphere, and 8 actually landed on the planet. This dedication placed the Soviet Union in a leading position in space exploration, with notable achievements like the first successful soft landing on another planet and returning images and sounds from the planet's surface. Despite the significance of these milestones, much of the Soviet space program's history is overlooked. This is largely due to their preference for secrecy. In 1992, the Soviet space program was decommissioned following the collapse of the USSR and was later revived under the new Russian space agency, Roscosmos. Many original records were lost or destroyed, leaving us without a clear understanding of the true motivations behind their Venus missions. One possible reason for their focus on Venus was cost efficiency. Studying Venus was more affordable than exploring other planets. Venus is only about 40 million kilometers from Earth, while Mars is about 250 million kilometers away. This difference in distance significantly impacted the cost of space missions. Had the US not been the world's largest economy, it may not have been able to invest in Mars exploration. While the Soviets faced technical difficulties, including frequent failures to maintain contact with their rockets, the proximity of Venus made it a more viable target for their missions. When we consider the context of the space race, the Soviet missions to Venus become more significant. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, and kicked off the space race. At the time, NASA was still struggling with its Venus missions, and the Soviets capitalized on their failures. NASA's repeated Venus mission failures during the 1960s led to what became known as the Venus Curse. This created an opportunity for the Soviets, who used their Venus missions to outpace the US in the space race, achieving milestones that the US had not. While NASA was focused on the Moon, the Soviets persisted with Venus, eventually achieving their own victory. Despite media portrayals of Venus as a hostile planet and Mars as humanity's future, the Soviets paid no mind to these labels. Their mission was clear: to demonstrate their superiority in space exploration. The Venera missions, though largely forgotten today, were instrumental in the Soviet Union's space achievements. Despite early setbacks, the Soviet Venera program became one of the most innovative and ambitious missions of the space age. Beginning in the 1950s, the Soviets tested various designs and technical aspects of interplanetary space travel, eventually launching rockets as part of the Venera missions. Amid the Cold War, the USSR was able to utilize increased resources, enabling them to build larger rockets capable of covering vast distances. The Soviets pursued both manned and unmanned space travel, focusing on developing advanced instrumentation to gather precise data for their Venus missions. In 1966, the Soviet Union launched Venera 3, which became the first spacecraft to enter the atmosphere of Venus and land on its surface. This marked a significant milestone in the space race, with the Soviet program advancing despite the challenges faced by the U.S. space missions, which often encountered failures. The Soviets, however, steadily overcame their design limitations and successfully launched more complex spacecraft, with the 1970s being a particularly groundbreaking decade for space exploration. One notable achievement was the simultaneous launch of Venera 4 and Venera 5. These missions were crucial for gathering vital data about Venus, focusing on the planet's surface conditions. Venera 7 made history by becoming the first spacecraft to successfully land on Venus, sending back crucial data from the planet's surface before losing contact after 23 minutes. This achievement highlighted the USSR's commitment to demonstrating its superiority in space exploration during the Cold War, while the US was focused on its moon missions. While the Venera program faced significant challenges due to the extreme conditions on Venus, such as its thick atmosphere, crushing pressure, and high temperatures, the Soviets continued to press forward with their mission. Venera 9, launched in 1975, returned the first black-and-white images of Venus' surface, further cementing the USSR's dominance in planetary exploration. These missions also provided important scientific information, such as confirming Venus' surface temperature of 465 degrees Celsius (869 degrees Fahrenheit) and its atmosphere composed primarily of carbon dioxide, with clouds of sulfuric acid. Despite the harsh environment, some scientists still speculate about the potential for life in Venus' upper cloud layers, where conditions might be more hospitable. The discovery of phosphine gas in Venus' atmosphere in 2020 sparked renewed interest in the possibility of microbial life, leading to new missions to explore Venus further. The Venera program, although largely forgotten in popular memory, was a pioneering effort that provided much of the first substantial data about Venus. It exemplified the Soviet Union's determination and technical prowess in space exploration. After the collapse of the USSR and the end of the Venera program, Venus exploration slowed, with NASA focusing more on Mars. However, recent advancements in technology and new scientific findings have reignited global interest in Venus. As space agencies like NASA, ESA, European Space Agency, and Russia work on new missions to Venus, the planet is once again at the center of space exploration. With projects such as NASA's Veritas and Da Vinci Plus, which aim to explore Venus' surface and atmosphere in greater detail, scientists hope to answer fundamental questions about the planet's geology, history, and potential for past or present life. International collaboration is also expected to increase, pooling resources and expertise to make significant strides in understanding Venus and its mysteries. Unlike the Cold War-era competition, today's missions are driven by shared scientific curiosity and the desire to answer profound questions about life beyond Earth.